In this lesson, we'll be continuing to discuss effects. If you'd like to follow along, go under the File menu to Open, and in the Working Files folder, go into Chapter number 14 and select Bevel and Emboss, and just click Open. I'm just going to scroll over a bit to make more room for a rather large dialog box. I'm going to select the text frame that says Bevel and Emboss and click on the text listing for that object to apply a bevel effect to the text. I'm going to go under my FX pop-up to Bevel and Emboss. And the first setting, the default Bevel and Emboss, is a style called Inner Bevel. And I probably would never use this with type because it is actually playing with the actual letter forms, because the effect is inside of the letters. Let me instead do this. I'm going to go under the Style pop-up and choose Outer Bevel. So at least with that, the bevel effect is entirely outside of the letter forms. Why don't we go through the various settings? There are various techniques. There's Smooth, and you'll see why it's called Smooth when I go to Chisel Hard, which kind of looks chiseled. And then another version of Chisel, which looks softer. Let me go back to Smooth. The direction, which some of these effects, it makes little difference which direction it is. Like, for instance, with Outer Bevel, if I choose up or down, it looks pretty much the same, except it looks like it's being lit from the opposite direction. Let me go back to up. In terms of size, if I wanted to make the bevel bigger, I would click the up arrow, and you can see it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I went too far. Let me click the down arrow. I could soften the bevel just by increasing the softness. I'm going to go back down to 0. The depth right now is at 100%. I could make that depth less, which is going to make it a lot less distinct. Let me go back up to 100. And the shading, I can control everything in this shading section, including the angle of the lighting source, its altitude, and also how bright the highlights are and how dark the shadows are. If I go to this shading widget, I can make the lighting come from more overhead just by dragging this little crosshairs closer to the center point. If I drag out towards the horizon line, the light is going to be lower and there'll be deeper shadows and brighter highlights. Right now, the altitude is just 2. I can also control that altitude by clicking the up arrow immediately to the left of the altitude field. My highlight is being created by using screen with white. So it's using white to make the highlight side brighter. And it's using multiply and black to make the shadow side darker. If I feel like my highlight side needs to be brighter, I could increase the opacity. And that makes it brighter. Why don't we go through some of the other styles in the structure section? Besides outer bevel, we already talked about inner bevel. And then there's something called pillow emboss. I'll come back to emboss in just a second. But you can see it looks almost as if the lettering is pillowing up, kind of like with a quilt, where you would stitch certain areas to make the interiors of the stitching kind of pillow up. So that's why it's called pillow emboss. I'm going to go back to outer bevel and click OK. For emboss, I want to go to the next page, and you'll see why. I'm going to select the frame that has the darker lettering in it that says bevel and emboss. The reason why I wanted to use darker lettering is with emboss, it's supposed to look like it's embossed into a piece of paper. So I'm going to select the object, go to my text listing in the effects panel, select that, go to my FX pop-up and choose bevel and emboss. But once again, instead of inner bevel, I'm going to choose emboss. And that really does look like it's embossed up from a red piece of paper. But if I emboss it in by using the direction down, that is really cool. It really does look like it's embossed into a red piece of paper. I'm just going to click OK to apply this. In upcoming lessons, we'll continue discussing effects.